Welcome to Pivotal. I'm Tara McEwen, the founder of McEwen Media and the host of this show. This is the podcast where I talk to business owners about the journey that got them here. There's a lot of twists and turns that go along with being a business owner. And these twists and turns, they're part of the journey, but they're also part of what makes you a better business owner and what makes you a stronger business. Sometimes the pivots lead to the wrong thing, but that actually leads you to the right thing. And that's the story we're going to get into today with Amanda Laird. Amanda Laird is a communication strategist and founder of Slow and Steady Studio, where she works with solo creative entrepreneurs and feminist organizations to do just enough marketing. Music to my ears. She is the author of Heavy Flow, Breaking the Curse of Menstruation, published by Dundurn Press, and was previously the host of the Heavy Flow podcast. Use your words, Tara, from 2017 to 2020. So please welcome to the stage, Amanda Laird.
Hi, Tara. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being here. There's so much about your journey that I love it. I can't wait to get into it. But how I like to start these conversations is just asking, like, what is your business now, and how do you feel about your business today?
Like today, because I mean, that might be different tomorrow. So today I'm predominantly supporting solo, service-based, creative entrepreneurs. I like to describe them as folks who are doing their own thing, building their own business, their own way. And I work with them a little bit on business strategy and also on their marketing communications strategy, and provide some advisory support along the way. And I still also work a little bit in a more traditional communications consulting way with organizations as well, which is nice. And how I feel about my business. I mean, 2025, need I say more?
Yeah. I was reading 2024 was the year where a lot of businesses and industries were saying we're going to survive until 2025. Now it's like we're going to survive this week of 2020.
100%. I mean, I will say that being a small business owner, supporting small business owners, and also, clients that I've worked with that are not for profit, like people just are losing funding, don't have as many funds. So it's a very scary time and an exciting time, because this is when you get to be really creative and figure out how you can do more with less. And so I would say, like, day to day, I definitely sometimes feel like I'm on a merry-go-round, like spinning out of control, like what the hell, like just try to hold on. But my big picture, this business feels very right.
Okay.
And difficult, challenging, wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. And I think that feeling right, that feeling aligned is so key. And that's actually the pivotal part, I think, for businesses of all sizes that are working to survive right now. Like, even, similar experience, right? I'm a solo business owner serving a lot of other solo business owners. And I've been feeling the tightening of their budgets for a long time. Marketing is kind of the first budget to get cut. But I also know that, especially in this current climate of, tariffs and trade wars and just general uncertainty of what the future is going to bring, businesses, like industries, businesses of all sizes are feeling the contraction. They're feeling the pinch, and I find a lot of comfort for me knowing that the things that I'm doing with my business from a strategy standpoint, from a messaging, and just from a simple realignment, the big guys are doing that too. The big businesses are doing this too. To me, it is like what feels right now, because no one knows what the future brings. So I love that. And so I want to kind of actually spend a little bit more time then with how the business feels today, because I think so many people are relating to what you're describing. You mentioned that it's difficult. So where are the spaces in your business that are difficult right now?
That's such a good question. As a human, who just doesn't like uncertainty. You know, I find that it can often be difficult to have those days or those weeks where you're like, I have to make up my job today. Like, you know, like I have to make up what my job is. So when you are in the flow and you've got projects and you've got client deliverables, you know, that's easy because you know what your tasks are, you've got deadlines, you know what you're kind of doing. But when you're in that place where it's like, okay, maybe I have a little bit, it slowed down a little bit. I have a little bit more time. Now it's time to think about what is this next campaign going to be? Or like, what is my new, I need a new strategy for sales and outreach. That can be, I struggle a little bit more with that because that's when all the business feelings come out.
Yes. Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And, you know, my business is called Slow and Steady. I founded in 2022. So not that long ago, but a lifetime ago. Yeah. And, you know, I was reflecting this week on Slow and Steady and choosing to go slow when that is like a definitive or like a deliberate choice. To go against the status quo is one thing. But when it's slow because it's just slow.
Yes.
That is
yes.
That is something different. And
you're right. Yes.
Learning to navigate that is a new curve.
Yeah. When you control the slow, that was when you feel like you're in because I received similar messaging too, especially when I first started my business. All of it is about like fast growth and scale. And if you're not scaling, you're failing. About a year ago, I actually worked with a CEO where she was like, no, actually the best piece of advice that she got, and she runs like a huge company and a huge brand. She's like, you actually want to go slow so you can grow fast. She's like, you want to spend that time solidifying your foundation, because if you go fast and your foundation is a pile of sand, it's going to fall apart. Whereas if you go fast because you're building on a strong, solid foundation and you have systems that are in place and they work and you've tested everything, then you can actually accelerate because you spent the time to perfect the thing. So and I've actually really learned to forgive myself and my slow growth too, because I'm like, actually, no, I've been spending the time now just to really reflect on, well, what is it that I actually want to do right now? What is the solid foundation that I want to build? But you're right, when the slowing down happens because of external factors, that is really, really hard. Yeah. So I'm just, this is my way of saying I hear you, Amanda. I hear you and I'm with you. But you also said that this is an exciting time. So what is exciting about this time for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, I feel like this is a moment to really step in to my vision as a business owner and leader, right? Like, it's one thing, and I think this is also as a solo entrepreneur, right? And especially when it's a service, right? There's this, oftentimes what I have seen, and certainly this was also my own story, like I would put myself in this category. Like, we are starting our businesses because we want to do what we want to do.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And now that I have done that for 3 years, right? Great. I know a lot more than I did in 2022.
Yep.
And in the years that I spent dreaming and visioning of this business too. And now I have so much more data, and I have collected a lot more information with clients that I've worked with, people who have come to workshops, feedback that I have gotten on campaigns. And so now I feel like my task is like, okay, this isn't just about doing what I want to do. It's how can I meet the needs of the people that I want to work with, and there's some tension there, right? Because I want to do what I want to do, right? And, you know, our moment is, well, maybe a solo entrepreneur doesn't have the budget to bring in long-term one-on-one advisory support, right? Or strategy. So I feel like I'm really being called to re-envision how I can serve my clients. Right? So what do they actually need, and what is actually going to help them also meet this moment? Because all of these things that I'm feeling, that you're feeling, that we just talked about, right? Not the only ones. This is not a party of two, right? Like, this is what all of our potential clients are feeling right now. And so how can I reimagine my business to meet them at this moment so that we can survive together?
What's so interesting about what you're describing, like how you're approaching your business, how you and your business are approaching this moment, this is another pivot point for you, right? Like, this is so much about pivoting, but I know that, maybe this is a good time for us to go then to the origin story, because you've pivoted a couple of times. So, taking you back then to when you first decided to move from working in communications for a company to then working for yourself. What was that environment? What was going on in your life at that point?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was in my 20s, so I knew everything.
Of course.
And
which you do. At your awareness, I'm a little bit glib, but at your awareness at 20, you do know everything. You know everything as how you've experienced life until your 20s, and now I'm in my late 40s. Same thing. I'm sure I'll be in my 60s, being like, oh my God, those perimenopausal women, they don't even know what they have coming. Anyway, in your 20s, you know everything.
So I knew everything, and you know, I had spent my career working in communications, you know, all 5 or 6 years of it at that point. Had gone to school for PR and Corp Comm. I had worked on in-house, and I was working in an agency. And I mean, working in an agency of any kind is definitely not for the faint of heart. But the environment was pretty toxic. I was working for somebody that I didn't have a lot of respect for. And so this is why I'm saying, you know, I was in my 20s, so I knew everything. And so I was like, well, if they can run this whole business, like surely I could run my own business, you know? And it was like, I remember the moment so clearly. It was like 7:30 at night. The whole office is dark. I'm the last one there. I'm going through the like monthly breakdown of my team's hours. And I was just like looking at my hourly rate that was being billed out to clients. And I was like, you know, it was 7:30 at night, and I was on like my 11th or 12th hour at the office that day. And so I was like, well, wait a second. What is actually my hourly rate? And I kind of calculated my salary or my paycheck based on the hours I was actually working. And of course, it was like shockingly like 5 times less than when I was being billed out at. And that was the first kind of inkling that I had that like, wait a second.
There must be another way.
There must be another way. But then also I, you know, so growing up as like an arty, weird, creative kind of kid, right? Now I would call myself an artist, but when I was in my 20s, I don't think I would have used those words. Like, I mean, like classic coming into communications and marketing as shadow work for the actual like creative work that I would really like to be doing, right? but I just didn't have this self-confidence to say, oh, I could step out of this role in PR and give it a go on my own. I could freelance, or I could build a business. And so this was, this was a long time ago. And so social media was still new-ish. Online business was still new-ish. And this was like when the 4-hour work week was like the
right.
kind of like was just starting to trend, right?
Yes.
And I was following a lot of holistic nutritionists who were building their businesses online. There wasn't a lot of them, but I was interested in holistic nutrition, following these nutritionists and seeing how they were, saying like, oh, I read the 4-hour work week and that's how I've built my business. And that is a very compelling offer, And so I thought, comms has burned me out.
Yes.
Agency life has burned me out. I'm smarter than any of these people. So I could definitely figure this out, but I don't want to do comms. I don't think I'm good enough to do comms. And so I'm going to go to school to become a holistic nutritionist, and I'm going to build that business. And then I will also feel much more fulfilled because I will actually be helping people and making a difference instead of writing press releases for enterprise technology. And I will be in much more helpful position.
Can I interrupt you here? Because I think because I'm always curious with, like, what data are we basing our decisions on at different points in our lives, right? So thinking back to, like, of course, when you're 20, you're starting out. You actually don't know what the work world is like and how you want to be in that work world until you're in there.
Exactly.
So the same thing, like, working in network television, I was told many times, well, you have to pay your dues. So I worked like a 3 a.m. shift. I worked weekends, I was also told that, when you work as a television producer, you get paid an experience, which is basically like you get to sometimes talk to a celebrity.
Right.
So that's kind of where the perks are. But again, not knowing any other way to create, not knowing any other way to be a professional creator, for me, at least, I stuck with it because I didn't know any other way. Here, though, you're in this agency position and you're like, this is not how I want to work. And then this other, like, if you think back to, the early days of influencer and just like the brand building in social media, that was the Wild West. So was it more this new commerce opportunity, or was it the holistic nutrition that attracted? Was it the subject, or was it the platform?
I mean, I think it was both.
Okay.
Right? I think it was both. I have, looking back, now that I actually know everything, but now that I'm 42, looking back, I always felt called to be of service in my work. Right? Like, I wanted to do good. I wanted to help people. I wanted to make an impact, right? Whether that is like an inherent desire that I have, and those are my values and how women and young women are conditioned, maybe a little bit of column A and column B, but there was that desire.
Yeah.
And working in comms, at least on the clients or like the companies that I was working at, just wasn't it, right?
Yeah.
And so I also saw, and I mean, also it was diet culture, right? Like, oh, well, I could become a holistic nutritionist, and that's just going to like unlock my life, because then I can be my own boss. I can set my own hours. I can do cool things like work from anywhere in the world. I can be home to pick up my future fictional children from school, and I would be thin and I would be rich, and this is just going to unlock this door, right? And so that was, I think, so much of my desire.
Yeah. There's something too, especially when you are making a living in the information economy. You have to be very aware of the content and how it aligns with you. The content that you will, when you are a paid creator, the content that you allow into your brain changes you. I learned this working in news, where it was just like, I can't do this. Don't bring me into talk. But the last time I worked in a newsroom, I was the most senior person on staff, and I'm like, don't give me the lead stories. Don't give me politics. Don't give me war. Don't give me crime. Put me at the end. Give me the cute animals. Give me local communities trying to break world records. That's my jam. Because when I first started out working in news, I'm like, I can't hold this information in me. It changes me. I don't like it. Similar to you, I want to, if I'm going to share information, I want it to benefit and uplift everyone. That's how I want to use my skills. And I think what we're talking around too is just this early awareness that the work you do, it needs to be aligned. It can't just be something just for the money. It has to feel right. It has to have that larger purpose and greater fulfillment. So yeah, in your 20s, you did know everything. That really is the key. Okay, so now your first pivot, so you've left PR communications. Now you are a healthy prenista. So tell me more about that part of your career.
Well, it didn't happen all at once.
Okay.
So I did. Thankfully, my dear husband convinced me to not quit my job immediately, to go to school full time. So I did pursue part-time. So my certification, I did evenings and weekends while working full time. And I spent my last day in a full-time corporate job in August of 2015, and I was 37 weeks pregnant. I wrote my licensing exams to become a holistic nutritionist that week, finished up at my corporate job and went on mat leave, and then had a baby.
Okay.
So
why change one thing when you can change everything? Okay. So what was describe to me a typical, how it felt to be in that space where everything is completely upside down?
And had a traumatic birth experience and almost died. So there was also that. That on top of it. And it was, at the time, it was so scary. Because a millennial woman, so my entire identity was wrapped up in being a communications person, and then it was like, then it was being a communications person who's pivoting to be a holistic nutritionist, right? So work was so much of my identity, and so to no longer have that felt very strange and scary. And then to now be a parent and not immediately identifying as being a mother or a mom, right? And stepping into this new identity. And this was like the first time in my entire life that I had agency over my time. When I was on maternity leave, right? I mean, as much as being a primary parent for an infant allows you to have agency over time, right? But I had never in my life ever had the time and space to decide what I was going to do today. To take a long walk, to have lunch with friends in the middle of the week. And I got so addicted to that actually. And like,
yeah, how did you manage that time freedom? Like, how did you structure your day? Because there's a lot of freedom, but there's also a lot of change happening. So how did you work through that?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the beginning, I wasn't thinking about building a business. I was really focused on taking a mat leave. So, you know, the first 6 or 8 months after my daughter was born, it was just, you know, baby time yoga and like circle time, nap traps, those types of things. And then as I started to have a little bit more energy, a little bit more time once those naps consolidated, and I started to work on launching my nutrition business. And of course, as a new mom, there's a lot of hunger for information around eating for energy, hormonal balance, you know, recovering from labor and delivery or breastfeeding. And so I've had a couple opportunities to kind of start building that business, did a couple of talks at some, you know, baby stores or like parent groups, those types of things, and started working on the online side of things kind of in earnest. And then once my daughter was a year old and that EI ran out, it was time to think about what happened next. And at the time, I just could not fathom going back to that full-time corporate job. And when I had left in 2015, I was pretty sure that my days were numbered, and that was kind of our family plan, that I would kind of get this nutrition business going. And like fast forward a year, I just could not imagine. And I didn't have full-time childcare. Like we live in downtown Toronto, so you know, the one waiting list that I put myself on because I had no idea what I was doing, like, didn't pan out. And so I started taking on some freelance communications and PR work while building that nutrition business. And all of that was really the kind of like part-time job, and the real dream and the real business was nutrition.
I'm hearing a lot of slowing down in this pivot point. Like, first there's the slowing down of your husband saying, like, let's not rush the schooling. Like, do it part-time, keep your full-time job. We live in downtown Toronto. It's hard to it's hard to run a household with a single income. So there's that practical side of it to begin with. But then that slows you down too, to really spend time with the subject matter and almost transition. Like, well, you know, it's almost like dating the business idea before going all in. Like, how long am I willing to commit to this? There's something about taking a slower approach with it, where it's like, well, no, I'm really, again, solidifying this idea for me. And then there's also the slowdown of your mat leave, right? Like, your body physically needing that extra time and care. Like, now is not the time to start business planning. Now is not the time to start networking. You need to slow down. Your baby needs you to slow down. So that's just more internal and external forces getting you to slow down. And then now this gradual easing. So how did it feel? Like, you have this idea, you want to take action on it. Did you feel impatient, or did it feel like this is the right pacing for right now?
That's a really good observation, and that's a really great question, because I mean, reading between the lines of that observation, you can see that going slow is not my inherent nature. And so when I named my business Slow and Steady, it was as much a North Star, aspirational North Star for myself as it was for any of my clients that I was working with. And so, I want to be done tomorrow. I want to be done yesterday. I want that success. And so That is a tension that I have always come up against in my entire life, no matter what. And so looking back, I can see what you're seeing and seeing those like external, like, oh no, you're slowing down here, madam, kind of moments. But certainly at the time, it was frustrating. Yeah. And I didn't like it. But one of the things that I should add to this point is, like, as I was trying to get this nutrition business off the ground, like, having a child and going through the experience that I did actually made me lose faith in holistic nutrition. Because I had done all of the right things, lit all the candles, had all of the right crystals, took the supplements, had acupuncture, and like my baby and I, like, she still ended up in the NICU and I was still in the hospital, and we still had these complications. And that experience was like almost like losing your religion, right? Or like losing your faith and your framework, because I had put so much faith into wellness. That wellness was going to make me good and keep me safe and make me whole. And the experience really rocked that faith. And I never got back to that place that I was with wellness after that. And this was also 2015. My daughter was born in August of 2015. We all know what happened in 2016. And so this maternity leave that I was taking was also with the backdrop of that Trump's first run, this change of this political change, or this, shift that we all felt. I had been radicalized, becoming a lifelong feminist, but now I was a capital F feminist, becoming a mother. And I'm also now walking through my neighborhood and seeing my neighborhood and the people who live in my community, and suddenly see my eyes open to, people like lower income people who are living in my neighborhood, and just seeing the city and in a different way, because I wasn't just commuting from my neighborhood to literally Bay Street. That's where my last office was, right? And now I'm seeing my city. And, as I'm walking around and I'm listening to podcasts about how to build your wellness business, but then I'm looking at my neighbors and the community that I actually live in and being like, I'm not going to tell these people that, like, how can I tell people to just buy organic produce? And that's the ticket. Like, it just, none of it made sense anymore.
So was this the environment then where the Heavy Flow brand started to come into view and solidify?
So, yes. Because as it turns out, so one thing that I did that did really spark my interest when I was studying holistic nutrition was this idea around body literacy, which is a term that was coined by Laura Werschler and some other folks in the menstrual equity space. And this idea about body literacy and about menstruation, and this idea that, like, period cramps might be common, but they're not normal. And having experienced midwifery care throughout my pregnancy and postpartum time, which is just an entirely different framework for medical care, that I was still latched onto. And so while I was starting this business, it was like, I'm going to be a period nutritionist. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to work with folks who have bad periods or who maybe are having fertility issues. And that was the niche that I wanted to go, that I really wanted to niche down into. Yeah. And so let me tell you, though, that even though that was not that long ago, people were not searching for period nutritionists.
No.
Okay.
And that is a very specific search term, I think.
Not a keyword search. And we did not have this, we just did not have the same kind of culture. Like, we had not yet experienced that culture shift around menstruation, right? That we enjoy now. Somewhat. You know, like we were in 2015, 2016, like we were still really much more deeper into periods. Like, periods were much more taboo. And so every so often I would get a client, mostly like my younger sister's friends, right? Coming to me, and I was just having these same conversations over and over and over again, right? Like, this isn't normal. This is how your period works. This is what your menstrual cycle. This is what we could look out for. This is how we might be able to care for ourselves. And it was having that conversation over and over and over again. And then that's when I kind of put my communications hat back on. And I was like, wait a second, I don't have any clients because people are not problem aware. Or they are problem aware when it comes to issues around menstruation, painful periods, irregular periods, but they're not aware that there's a solution.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And so hence nobody Googling period nutritionist Toronto. And I found myself, I had wrapped up with some of my consulting clients. I had a little bit of time, and now it was 2017. It was like around this time. So like spring, summer 2017, I was in a small mastermind and I had literally not a single update to give them. And I just was like, you know, I was thinking I'm going to start a podcast. And they were immediately so supportive. And like my friend Deborah like pulls out her notebook and she's like, all right, brainstorming. What are the topics? Who are the guests? What is it called? We love this idea. And they were just so supportive that it just like happened.
Yeah.
And having a project, having something that was for me, but that also had momentum, and being able to be in that like beginner's mindset and that like just that good early creative energy just felt so good. And that podcast, everything, it was divine timing. Like it really felt like divine timing, and everything just started to fall into place. And so my podcast launched September, the first Thursday after Labor Day, because you can take the girl out of school, but that first week of September is the new year. Do not fight me.
No.
First Thursday after Labor Day in September, my podcast launched. And shortly after that, that's when Me Too broke. And now there is this huge sea change in conversations about women's bodies and how we treat them, and what is okay or not okay to do to them. And Heavy Flow really benefited from that movement, because there was just something in it was just a cultural moment that I just happened to hitch my wagon onto, where people were hungry to have real conversations, unfiltered conversations, and they wanted it and they were ready for it and they wanted to talk out loud.
There are so many pieces of that journey that I think are so important in terms of counting all of that as market research. I think we sometimes, because there was definitely going to school, right? There was definitely getting your qualifications, seeing what was out there, seeing there's another model, another way of doing business, another way of doing communications, but then taking the time to, have a new relationship with holistic nutrition, have a new relationship with your body and how we treat and heal female bodies and how that all kind of works alongside how all of this is happening, with everything with that was going on, with the pussy grabber president, the pussy hats, all that stuff happening in 2016. We can name it. And I love how you call it a shift. To me, it was a disappointment. Right?
Yes.
With both elections, it's like, what else do we need to do to prove that women can be in charge? Like, give me anyways, I'm about to go off on a tyrant. But you're taking in all of this information. Like, there's the formal training, and then there's the formal business analysis. But then there's just who you are, being out in the world, taking in that information and distilling all of that inside you and saying, this is the impact that I can have. And if a business comes after that, fantastic. But this is the impact that I can have. There's something about that aligned, the creative, you talk about having the creative momentum behind the podcast. The podcast idea just brought all of this stuff together. This is the anchor point, and then everything follows from that. So then tell me then, once you had started the Heavy Flow podcast, what happened to that brand afterwards?
Yeah. So, I mean, the original impetus for Heavy Flow, it was top of the funnel marketing, right? It was brand awareness and really positioning myself as a holistic nutritionist. And you would listen to that podcast, and it's Amanda Laird. I'm a registered holistic nutritionist, host of this podcast, right? And so that was my initial thought, was that I'm going to get clients. I will say, and I can say this objectively, like, I was also I was a bad nutritionist. Like, I was not good at it.
I love the honesty. Okay.
Like, I really was not good at it. And I mean, part of it was this loss of faith and the cult of wellness.
Yeah. Right? I was going to say, because where is the judgment? Like, who is deciding that you're a bad nutritionist? What define bad?
So there was that, but people would come to, like, okay, people pay a nutritionist because they want answers. They want you to tell them what to eat. And so what would happen is, my client, I would sit down with my client. Sometimes I would see them in person, or we'd be talking virtually, and they would be like, so, like, I drink a lot of coffee. Should I give up coffee? And I would say, I don't know. What do you think?
Sounds like you're my kind of nutritionist.
Do you think you should be giving up coffee? Like, let's unpack that.
Does cheese make you happy, Tara? Do you really want to give up cheese?
Yeah, like, I don't know. Do you think that? And I'm like, on my intake form, I would like ask this question that would be like, what do you think you need to do to be well? And that I would be like, yeah, this is a good idea. Like, what you have put on this form. So, like, I just wasn't good at it.
Yeah.
And partially because, I just like lost my faith in wellness, and I just wasn't that interested, because I was having these super provocative conversations with just like the coolest women I've ever met. And it was just so much more fun. Yeah. And the podcast, the podcast accidentally became a business. And I had, because as these things go, right? Like, you end up in the media database. Now you're getting pitched, right? Now the communications coordinator at Diva Cup is like listening to Heavy Flow. So now I've got the CEO of Diva, Carolyn, on my podcast. And at the end, after that wrapped, like the communications person said to me, like, oh, we would love to coordinate with you. Would you, or like continue our collaboration? Like, would you want to sponsor? And I was like, well, yes, I'll send you my sponsorship package. Google how to make a sponsorship package for a podcast, right? And so, I mean, I never paid my mortgage with any sponsorship money from Heavy Flow by any stretch of the imagination, but I was able to pay a producer. Eventually got to have all my expenses, except for my time, covered by sponsorship. And it was building Heavy Flow as a business that I was like, oh, this is it.
Yes.
Right? Like I've got money flowing in, and I'm in charge of this money and how this money gets distributed. And I have this platform that I can share with other women. And we did some fun things like, you know, in the summertime, I would run reruns. And I would sell ads for like $50. And if I sold, you know, 7 out of 10 ad spots, then the next 3 I would give to Black women entrepreneurs or anybody who just felt like they needed their brand to be boosted, right? Like, and I got to do this fun stuff, and I got to really run this business in a way that was fun and aligned with my values. And there was somewhere in there, like eventually I started, because I also wrote a book in there, forgot that part, right? Also wrote a book in there, and like kind of felt like I had reached the end of the road of how many angles I could like put on this conversation and get to the end and be like, oh, we're all fucked by capitalism and patriarchy. Like, you know, there's only so many times like exactly. I had that conversation 111 times on Heavy Flow, and eventually you just like, I had burnout from that. It started to make me feel like I wasn't actually making a difference. And like between 2017 and 2020, there was a huge cultural shift around menstruation. And Heavy Flow played a role in that. Right? And I'm not saying that it was my little indie podcast that put that, you know, the period scene in Turning Red, but we contributed to a culture that made that possible. You know? And I mean, I stopped producing stopped producing the podcast in 2020 because of the pandemic. And I was just tired. And now I'm also an online school teacher. And so I just can no longer produce a podcast. I also was pretty sure we were all going to be dead by June. And so, you know, and so I kind of just stopped by accident. I didn't need to. But then the further I got away from it, the like better it felt. And the more I could be like, yeah, it served a purpose. It did the thing. And I'm happy and I'm proud of Heavy Flow. And then this is really like the all the way around pivot moment. It was like, oh, and that project wasn't a success because you're a fantastic nutritionist. It's because you're really good. at communications.
Well, and I think that the idea for the nutritionist was just to get you out of autopilot. It was just to get you out of that lane. And I think that that's what because there are so many people who they have ideas for business and they either take action and it falls apart or they don't take action. Sometimes this other idea is a deliberate detour to get you back to where you were, because really, and that could also be where the slowing down with the studying and also just like having that relationship crisis with the subject matter. Holistic nutrition let you down. Do I now actually want to be part of moving forward that conversation? But then this other conversation emerged. I think that there's nothing wrong with, and I think too, what I'm hearing so much in your story is just being guided by, well, what feels right? I am put on this planet to do something. What feels right to me right now? So so you were in 2020, you shut down Heavy Flow, and then Slow and Steady started in 2022. So what happened in that 2-year gap? How are you using that other bonus slowdown that from external forces? Yeah.
Well, in 2019, so just the year before the pandemic, I started working in the women's entrepreneurship ecosystem.
Yeah.
And Heavy Flow, like my book was coming out, so I'm starting to think about what's next. And I could really see this online business escalator, right? Like, oh, okay, so I could probably create an online course based on the book and then start training people in my methods or blah, blah, blah. And it just was not for me.
Yeah.
And so I started to think about what's really next. And I had in my journey and building Heavy Flow, I met Madeline Shaw and Suzanne Simons, who were the founders of, at the time it was called Luna Pads. Then they rebranded to Isle. And I heard them say the phrase feminist business. And putting those two words together was like, oh, that's what I've been looking for my whole life. Yeah. And so as I was growing Slow and Steady, I started to gravitate towards this community and get involved with some feminist entrepreneurs and definitely, being in close proximity with Madeline and Suzanne. They taught me so much and they were huge supporters of Heavy Flow. And I had an opportunity to work in a more communications consulting capacity in the women's entrepreneurship ecosystem. And I just loved it. It was great. And being so close to women running businesses, learning about the entrepreneurial indicators that women have, learning about aligning your business with the SDGs, and just really seeing that there is another way.
Yeah.
Which is what I think I sensed when I was in my 20s, being oh, well, if this bozo can run a business, definitely I can. I can do it my way.
Yeah.
Just really getting into that world. And so in 2020, after the pandemic hit, I started as a contractor working at the Diversity Institute in Ryerson, now TMU, at Ryerson, on the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, which is a research arm of the federal government's women entrepreneurship strategy. And I was working there. And by the end of 2022, I was the acting director of marketing and comms, started as part-time, couple of hours, and then was running the comms there. And I'm just not a house cat anymore.
Yep.
I've got to be freewheeling agency over my time. And so when my contract was up, I was suffering greatly from burnout.
Yeah.
And I needed time and space. And I needed to get back to that agency that I had when I was on mat leave, to take a long walk and to decide what I was going to do with my day. And I knew that I had learned enough between my freelance days, doing anything for money and comms, heavy flow, and then being in the women's entrepreneurship ecosystem. I was like, okay, I know what's next.
Yeah.
And that's when Slow and Steady.
Yeah. I love, and I myself being a burnout survivor, I know exactly the feeling of burning out. What I've learned though in the last couple of years though is that burnout isn't necessarily about activity or even energy output. It is the alignment. I am working more like longer hours with higher stakes challenges than I ever did in network television, but the fulfillment is so much stronger. I feel like the work that I'm doing is making a difference, whether people work with me or not. Like even, a conversation like this, someone is listening to this conversation and they're hearing exactly what they need to just calm down and slow, like do the slow down, like slow down and just get right with what you're doing, because burnout is not, it's not energy, but it's misaligned energy. Yeah. You're putting out to more than what you're getting back in return. What I love too about your approach with Slow and Steady marketing is that you help entrepreneurs do just enough marketing. Because I think, especially, and I'm guilty of this too, you can fill your day. Now that you have autonomy, you have power over your schedule, you can fill it with a bunch of useless stuff that feels productive because it's building your brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some, maybe in the final section of the podcast then, how can people detect if they're wasting their energy in marketing, and how can they course correct to do just enough?
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, are you getting the results that you want, right? Like, let's talk a little bit about energy for impact, right? Yeah. Like, if you feel like you are doing all of the things and you're not getting the inquiries, you're not getting the clients, you're not making the sales that you want, like, yes, key indicator that something is misaligned. Yeah. And oftentimes what I see, especially with folks that I work with, is a lot of the small business advice that we see online are high volume tactics, traffic marketing tactics that work when you're selling a candle. Yep. Right. And a lot of the frameworks are really geared towards that. And I see service-based entrepreneurs that are trying to use those tactics and then they're not closing deals. Yeah. And so aligning your business model with your marketing is often key. And so sometimes if you feel like you're doing all the things, and I'm everywhere, I'm on social, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm making a podcast, I'm like going to networking events, and it's not actually moving the needle, probably that's a good symptom that your tactics are misaligned with your business model. Yeah. And so that's where I often start, is like looking at your business foundations, right? We were talking a little bit about this. And so what actually is your business? How do you actually make money? How many clients do you need? How long do you work with them? Like, actually my first, like, do not pass go assignment for any one-on-one clients that I work with is having a cash forecast. Yeah. Right? Because folks often end up being like, I need to do more marketing. I need more marketing. And they think that a marketing plan is going to be their safety in their business. And you will, and I'm like, no. Before we can have a marketing plan, we need a cash forecast. So we know when money is coming in, when it's not coming in, where it's coming from, and we can start to use that to build a plan, especially when you're just one person.
Yeah.
Right. And so what are just enough of the right tactics, the right strategy that is actually going to fulfill your pipeline, your pipeline, bring in the leads, and help you make sales.
Yeah. To me, too, the alignment check goes all the way to the point of sale moment too. Like, sure, I can have a solid marketing funnel that's driving a ton of leads, but if I'm ultimately selling something that the market doesn't want, that's going to cause. So I was actually I've been looking into Lego actually experienced this. So I'm always comforted when the mistakes that I'm making, the big ones made it too. So when Lego went through their huge expansion, towards the end of the 90s, when they were trying to still appeal to the computer generation kids, like the internet was coming on the scene. They were trying to stay relevant to the younger generation. So that was when they started introducing like these packaged kits. Instead of just the bucket of blocks that I grew up with, it was packaged kits. You follow these instructions, no tears, no failure, no stress, no worry. You follow these instructions, and this is how Lego is successful for the next generations. And then on top of that, doing all of this extra brand work with like Legoland and the merch. And I'm sure there was even a cereal at some point. The company was almost bankrupt. So they brought in a new CEO who looked at all this extra stuff and was like, well, we need to get rid of all the extra stuff. This extra branding flex it's draining us of our resources. It's not doing anything for us. The problem is the product itself. Kids don't care about this product. Adults do. They realize that these packaged design kits, these very elaborate projects, weren't speaking to kids who were, engaging with technology, but they were speaking real hard to grown-ups who were trying to just adult, also in the internet age, where everything feels chaotic, where it feels like everything you do, who knows if this is going to work out. You now have this hobby where if I put this block here and this block here and this block here and this block here, eventually I have Big Ben. So that's when they realized, well, actually our market, our target has changed. He just brought it back down to, well, what is the thing that we do best? We make it easy for people to be architects and engineers. Who wants to be an architect and an engineer in their spare time right now? The grown-ups who are willing to pay hundreds of dollars for these kits. A child is, so to me, that blew my mind. So again, alignment, it's the full alignment, right? It's you as a spokesperson for your company, it's the marketing funnel that you have, and it's the product. What am I selling to my target right now? Do they need this stuff right now? We started the conversation off this way, like the small businesses that we're marketing to, the solopreneurs, they need sales help.
Oh yeah.
They don't need to be on television. So I've actually, since the beginning of the year, have introduced just whatever I can do to help you get through this time. We'll get through it together, and then we can all be on TV.
Yeah.
Survive this era. But I think, to me, and that is blending the masculine and the feminine, right? It's just me looking out there. Who have I surrounded myself with? Who is expressing interest in working with me, and how can I best serve them right now? And as a solopreneur, I can adjust and pivot that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with a slowdown. There's nothing wrong with it. It's in the moment. It's hard, but good things come from it. Your entire career is an example of that.
Yeah. And, having faith.
Yeah.
Having faith that what goes down must go up again. I think that's physics. Like, I don't know. I am the artist. So I can't say for sure, but yeah, I feel like this is also just an opportunity to dream even bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
About what could be possible. And, I look at my business as creative expression, self-expression, as we were talking about. But, and this is the lesson that I took away from Heavy Flow, it's also a vehicle for creating the kind of world that I want to live in too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one that is, you know, much more driven by empathy and care and community and sharing of resources and right. And if there was ever a time for any of that, it is now.
It is now. So let's end it then with this question. If anyone watching this now is feeling the frustration, because when you're not in control of the slowdown, it is frustrating. So what piece of advice would you give for someone who is slowing down, maybe not by choice at this moment in time?
You know, this is where I like to lean into like the cash flow forecast, right? Like what is actually true for your business right now? Because maybe it's scary to not be having inquiries, but you have clients that are going to take you 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. Sorry, I'm going to cough.
That's all right. We'll fix it in post. My neighbor is also drilling next door, so who knows if that's coming through.
I definitely can't hear it.
Okay.
Sorry, when the spring cold meets the spring allergies, right? Yeah. Like this is it till Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So what is actually, like, what are the facts and what is actually true in your business? And where can you find some safety and security, even if it's not enough? How do we find just enough safety and security? Because when you can say, okay, I've got a 90-day runway, I've got 6-month runway, this is how long I can continue to pay myself and pay my bills, then you know you are operating from a place that is much more safe and secure. And then you can access curiosity, right, to find out what's next. And this is where it also takes extreme decoupling of your worth as a person and as a human.
Yes.
Your business performance doesn't say anything about your worth as a person.
Absolutely. Which is so key. Yeah, because that's why I started the conversation asking how the business feels to you, because as I always say to my clients, how you feel about your business directly impacts how you promote it, which then directly impacts how it grows. So
yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. Like where you put your energy, like it grows.
Absolutely. Well, I could talk to you all day about communications, growth, marketing, energy. Amanda, if someone is if they've heard something that they love about you, where can people learn some more about working with you?
Yeah, you can go to slowandsteady.studio. That's my website. Sign up to my newsletter. I send a newsletter every Friday, and once a month I host a free workshop, mini training, hot seat kind of coaching session to answer questions about marketing and communications and sales.
Brilliant. What a wonderful resource for right now. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you.